People have a lot of questions about what ICE can do, what they can't do.
Dozens of residents filled Second First Church to look for answers from leaders and legal experts.
It says, when ICE comes to town, how would you advise students and families regarding schools?
The Public Safety Community Forum, hosted by the League of Women Voters of Greater Rockford, gave people a chance to ask about immigration, public safety, and their rights.
It would be great to hear from elected officials and appointed officials what their thoughts on the matter are.
Panelists answered several questions about constitutional rights, federal authority, and how immigration law works.
It's really important people understand what their rights are, their right to remain silent, their right to consult with an attorney before they answer any questions, and their right to ask for a warrant signed by a judge before law enforcement's allowed to search their home.
One of the region's lawmakers says immigration enforcement is an important tool for public safety.
I welcome federal authorities as they come into our communities to enforcing federal laws, which is certainly well within their right to do.
Dana Briggs, a U.S. Air Force veteran, says his experience with immigration enforcement inspired him to hear how Rockford handles federal agents. He says he worries about due process and how immigration cases can affect families.
The abuses that you hear about from other sources are something that is not anything new, and it needs to stop.
In Rockford, Miriam Niesmeyer, WIFR News.